30 minutes of finagling with it, it's finally back there. So I got the bolts on the manifold slightly snug. I do want to go back and try to torque them pretty good. And then also too, you can see I added a turbo blanket. I just bought a cheap one off of Amazon for like 30 bucks. We'll see how well it does. I say it's better than not having one, so I decided to put one on there. It doesn't fit perfectly, but it does fit, so that's good. Now it's time to drain the oil and finish the intercooling piping. So I got the intercooling piping done on this side all the way up to here, and then down here I realized I didn't cut the hole big enough, so I gotta go back and recut this. Probably another, like, if I could do 1 inch, I will. I know I'm very limited to how much space, because there's part of like a frame right there, so I'm gonna cut as far as I can over to that. But so far everything's been going pretty good, smooth sailing on here, so definitely have to say it's going a lot smoother than the first time I did this, but that was because I didn't know what I was really doing. Now that I still don't know what I'm really doing, it's going fairly easy now. It's actually the next day, and I started on the oil pan. So I drained the oil last night, and then I popped this off this morning. So, and I was being very careful not to make a mess, and luckily I didn't make a mess like I did last time. But I got this pretty much prepped. I cleaned the engine surface a lot better. This one, like, there's really only that flat patch on here that needs to be clean of the RTV. All the rest can, I mean, it all folds over, so you could spend all day trying to clean this up. So this is probably as good as I'm gonna get it. This is probably like I had it last time. I cleaned the bottom better than I did on this one, so, but now that we got this done, now it's time to do the best part of drilling a hole in the engine. So we're gonna get started on that. I'm gonna use a step drill. That was the best way I did it last time, so I'm gonna use it this time as well. And then we'll drill and tap the block for the fitting. You can finally see there's a nice hole right through the block. So I've already threaded this so that way it'll fit the fitting. I'm just cleaning up everything now, making sure there's no aluminum chips in here. Just kind of like wiping down everything just to make sure I didn't leave anything. But yeah, so the worst part is done. So like I said, I used a 3/8 18 NPT to drill. I drilled it to 9/16 with a step drill, and then I hand tapped it with a 3/8 16 tap, because that's the fitting I'm using. So, and there it is right there, probably about 1.5 inches, 2 inches from the bottom of the engine. So now I'm gonna put some RTV on the brass fitting, and then we'll thread that in and seal it up really good so it doesn't leak. So, and this is exactly how I did it last time, and it was working perfectly. I know I wish I could drill into the oil pan, but the oil pan is too shallow for a good drain, so this is where you have to do it. But if you do it carefully, take your time, it'll come out pretty good. So, but yeah, let's clean up and then put this fitting on there for the oil drain line. I got the downpipe on. I got pretty much everything all situated. The only thing I have to fix now is I gotta cut more of this because I didn't cut it far enough when I put this on there. The piping won't fit, so I gotta cut a little bit more off of that. And I have to say, the downpipe, I don't remember it being so bad, but every bolt is in the worst spot to try to get. So, I mean, you're definitely gonna bang up your hands trying to get to every bolt. I wish you could bolt that on and then put the turbo in, but there's already barely enough room to even do that. So I got the downpipe on, and I just got to connect this intercooling piping from there to the turbo and do a little bit of electrical, and we should be good to go, other than filling this up with oil. But I'm letting the RTV cure as long as possible before I put oil in there. And then I don't have this oil line hooked up to the turbo yet because I want to prime the oil pump to make sure there's oil in there so I don't starve the turbo. But other than that, we're on track to completing this pretty quickly. I'm in the process of getting the exhaust on. I got the mid pipe down, about to put the muffler on. Definitely have to say, dwindling down quite a bit on the parts that are in here. So I know this trunk was filled when I first started. This is just the last intercooling piping that I have to cut bigger. But figured I try to do all the ground stuff now so I don't have to get back on the ground later. But I got the mid pipe on, everything. Just got to attach the muffler and notch this out and get closer. So, and then we are pretty much ready to put oil in this thing. And oh, I still have to do the harness and the boost controller. But that shouldn't take too long, but I also have to do that as well. So, but hopefully we'll be starting this car in the next hour or two. Alright, so I'm on the home stretch here, getting super close. Everything has been tightened up with the intercooler side, turbo side, exhaust, everything's been tightened up. I just put in the piggyback harness, got some of the vacuum lines routed. I used the turbo kit. They had a vacuum, I don't know what, manifold that I never used last time because I didn't have the right fittings. But now that I got the right fittings, I was able to hook up the blow-off valve, the AEM controller because that runs to a vacuum, and then I have the boost gauge that's got to run into the cabin, which I haven't done yet. So I'm straightening that up, and then I got to figure out how to wire this boost controller. But once I figure that out, then I'll get power to that. This fitting for the turbo oil inlet is left undone so I can prime the oil. But so now I'm working on these gauges here. So when I put the exhaust on, I put the O2 sensor in there. I gotta pull it up and then try to route it inside somehow. I don't know exactly how I'm gonna do it. And then I bought this cheap gauge cluster thing. It was like 15 bucks. It was from Glow Shift. So I'm gonna put the gauges in here and try to get all the wiring done. And then once we get that done, then we should be ready to start. Oh, and then I also have to put my battery terminals on. I just got those as well. Hopefully they're the correct ones, otherwise I won't be able to start the car. And oh, and then get a power to this for the piggyback ECU. So let me try to button up all this and then we should be ready to start it. Alright, so I think I got the worst of it out of the way. What I mean by the worst is getting everything through the firewall. Honestly, I don't know. I hate doing that, but I got the intake tube through. I have the mass airflow sensor, or not mass airflow sensor, the AFR gauge through for the O2 sensor. And then I got these two wires going to the boost controller. So I still have to wire everything up, but I got everything where I want it. So as soon as I can figure out how to wire everything, because I think too, what I'm gonna do to make things easier, and I think probably cleaner looking, is tap into the power and ground on the radio. So that way I'm not having to use like a plug a fuse or whatever, as well as the harness that goes from the radio to the stock harness is disposable. So if I ever need to change it, I can just get another harness and swap it over. So, but for now, I got, some of these wires are super long, but I got all the wiring I need. here as well as over there. So now I just need to get everything together and turning on. Alright, so I just hooked up all the wiring behind the radio and I just connected the battery, so I have power now. So let's see. I put in the, oh, look at that. So those gauges are working. So now I have to prime the car to get oil. To here. Alright, so I just put some oil in here, got this in a bag, and now I'm going to crank it over a few times, try to get oil to that bag, and then we'll hook that up to the turbo. Alright, I got oil here, so I'm going to hook that back up. Oh crap, there's a hole in this bag. I'm going to hook that back up, and then we'll try to start the car. Alright, so I just started the car, and I actually started it without the plug and play harness. I don't know, I didn't want it to give me any problems at first, so I undid it. But everything seems to be looking good. I do have a check engine light, as well as my traction control. And stuff is flashing, so one thing, the vacuum line isn't picking up. Alright, so the car started. I hooked this back up to see if that would help anything. And I did also find a huge boost leak, or vacuum leak I should say. Because when I did this block, I took this out and it was just wide open. There was like a little plug here. So I just took one of the small ones, I melted it, and close that hole up. So I have no check engine lights. Boost is measuring 20, well, negative 20 because it's pulling vacuum right now. Air fuel ratio is about 14.5. Not familiar with that. I think around 14, 15 is, I think, ideal. So that's looking pretty good. This is literally just up here right now. Nothing in particular. So, but I have no check engine lights, which is good, and everything else is looking pretty good. So I'm gonna let the car warm up, make sure everything is looking good, and then we can wrap things up. Alright, so definitely had a pretty successful day here. So got the Corolla running, everything looks good. I also do need to remember to pick up a little filter for that too. But everything looks good. I did notice when I was just warming up, I forgot to trim a bolt on the exhaust side, so I'm definitely gonna have to cut that because it was really tick. It was ticking really badly. But engine was running pretty good. Did have a little bit of a rough idle, but I think once we start driving it and it learns the idle, everything will be pretty good. So, but I have to say, going from a whole trunk load of parts to just the intake left, and then these are just a few. I had this gauge left, but not realizing that the boost control also controls, or I mean, also puts out the pressure, so I don't need that. But yeah, just gotta put that on there, button up a few things, and we'll be good to go. So if you guys are excited as I am, stay tuned for the next video. I'm gonna button this thing up, and then it's time to go for a test drive.